Well, this is Dr. Chadwick Wright. He is now a rebuttal witness for the state. He's being questioned by the defense attorney. They're getting into some real complex scientific stuff. And I think that there's something far more fascinating in this case that we need to address. And that is my awesome guest, Judge Ashley Willcott, who is back with me again because her commentary is awesome and unbelievable. Welcome, Judge.
Thank you. Good to see you, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to see you. So we have this expert. This is going on in the mitigation piece now where they're trying to, I guess, explain the defense and mitigation, the mental problems, the organic mental problems that this person had, and I guess trying to connect that into why he would murder essentially 5 people. What are your thoughts?
Well, the same. And so here we have this doctor that the state has called, Dr. Wright, who did a PET scan of the defendant. So I expect that the testimony is now going to talk about what exactly the results of that indicate in the mental health, whether or not that's a mitigating factor or not.
Right. So, well, listen, Judge, I mean, this has really been a fascinating case. We've discussed it on many angles that I'm sure I'm going to do with you. It talks about really bad people that do bad things, a guy with a terrible record with 5 bodies on his jacket, and some testimony I think is not going to really resonate well with this jury. And in fact, we'll talk about a little bit of that prosecutorial misconduct that caused this to have to be retried in the first place. But this is the Law&Crime Network, gavel to gavel coverage. You've got to love these trials because there's so many issues, and we have great commentary and guests like people for Judge Ashley Willcott. We also like to have a little fun on our program, Judge. And so we have to do a break, and on the other side of that break, we're going to come back, discuss a little bit more of this case, and get your perspective as a judge and a trial lawyer as to what you think this all means. We'll see you on the other end of the break. Hi, I'm Bob Bianchi. I'll be with you for the next couple of hours with my guest, Ashley Willcott, and we are in the Anthony Kirkland death penalty case, as you all know. They've adjourned for the day. I hate that as a lawyer, that you can't get a full day of testimony, but we just got done listening to a Dr. Chadwick Wright, and I'd like to bring Ashley on because there were a couple of areas we were talking about off camera as nuanced trial lawyers. Sometimes this may not make sense to some of the viewers, but when they were talking about your reputation or the reputation of another witness, Judge, tell the audience the difference between when you testify to reputation, you just can't give specific instances of conduct. You got to do reputation in the general community of experts. Is that the same in Georgia?
That's right, it is. And so when you say the general community of experts, that's the piece that's so crucial in terms of the testimony, and that is amongst all of the individuals in that field, but also the general reputation in terms of any websites, any information that's out there amongst, again, that particular field has to be introduced into evidence.
Yeah, and I want to talk about, because the cross-examination of expert witnesses is a key to any trial lawyer, and I find that many of them don't work on this craft. My old mentor that taught me used the analogy of an expert as a bear in a cage, and you don't want to get into the cage with that bear, so you make sure that door is locked, and you get like a 10-foot pole, and you do little poking here and there, and then back up and see how that expert does, because when you tangle with an expert on the science, you could get hurt.
Absolutely. I've seen a lot of lawyers in court when I'm the judge lose to the expert because they start asking questions in a way to try to trap the expert, and the expert knows better and more than they do on that subject matter, and that's exactly what happens. The other thing is a trial skill, as you well know, Bob, is you keep your questions very short.
Right, and we're going to talk about maybe some tricks of the trade on cross-examination of expert witnesses where you cannot lose if you do it right. But, Judge, we got to get to one of my favorite segments of the show, the top crime stories, because these are these little vignettes going around the country of some of the craziest stuff like we had in Georgia last week with the guy hanging onto the car for several miles. We'll be back on the other end. Top crime stories, crime, crime, crime. That's what we got. And we also got Ashley Willcott, who is a trial lawyer and a judge and a great guest. Welcome back, Judge. We were in the area where we were talking about expert witnesses and how to cross-examine them. And you saw some of this kind of coming out. So one of the #1 ways that you can really hurt an expert without getting into their science and getting into that cage with that bear to get ripped up is, did they review all the documents in the case, Judge? It never ceases to amaze me that I can cross a witness for maybe an hour, like well, all the information's relevant, right? Yeah, and you lead them down that path, and you want to know everything before you can offer an opinion before this jury under oath. Isn't that true? Yeah, you don't want information withheld from you, certainly. Yet you go through this little line of questioning, and then you start going through the stuff that he did not have in his file, and that's strike one. Have you ever seen that done effectively? Because I've done it effectively for many years.
Absolutely. I do think it's a good trial skill technique that not all attorneys have, but I have seen it. My recollection in the testimony we just listened to is this doctor said he did not, in fact, have all the records. So you could effectively cross using your technique.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes right to the credibility, and you don't even need to get into the science because you've already led him down the path to say all the records are relevant. And in the end, in fact, when you sum up, you could sit there and say, hey, I mean, who can blame the doctor? You know, those guys didn't give him all the data and information. So it's a killer, and it happens all the time. The other one is, did you look at prior medical records, or did you look at any authoritative literature with respect to the opinions that you're giving? And if you have authoritative literature in your hands that you can cross-examine him on, you get him first to identify that as an authoritative source. And once he does, say, you know, curiously, I looked at page 92 of that, and it says this, and that's different from your report. Would you agree or disagree? It's different. You don't ask them to explain it, because then you're going to get a professorial response. Yes?
Yes. Absolutely. So that's the kind of question you want to ask. And in this case, note, one of the things I wrote down was the statistical analysis. And I think they were going down the road that you suggested. Hey, did you do any statistical analysis? No. And so they can go down that same road. Right.
Okay. I thought the best thing that they did in that whole thing so far was saying that you refused to speak to the defense. That is something that you can play a little game with. I don't think it's effective, but it's not going to win the day. Judge, we had defense openings in this case. Let's go to them. We'll talk more about experts, more about opening statements, because now this trial's done for the day. We got two pros on here. Hey, anybody that's on the chat room, if you have any questions, you know I love to answer them. Thank you always for the support for this Dan Abrams production of Law and Crime, because if it wasn't for you, people like myself and the judge wouldn't have an opportunity to explain our experiences with these trials. Let's go to the opening.